Welcome, guys. We're waiting on other people to join before we begin. Welcome, Aaron. All right, sure. All right, so we are in the beginning of a new year with new goals that we would like to achieve. And one of those goals for most people, if not all, is to make more money. How much money you're able to make as a freelancer will depend on how you manage your time and your ability to work on multiple projects. As such, we thought it would be fitting to get advice from a project manager who has been successfully completing projects for over 13 years. He hails from Philadelphia, aka Philly, the same city as Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He is a proud father of 3 beautiful children, has the brain of a mad genius, and he's on a mission to teach freelancers, entrepreneurs why they need project managers. He is the owner and creative conductor of the company ArcBM, where they vet, connect, and manage projects for freelancers, small business owners, creative agencies, and large enterprises. He also coined the phrase, if you don't have a project manager, you are the project manager. Today, he'll be talking about how you successfully manage multiple projects as a freelancer. Listen attentively as he virtually takes you through the process of becoming superheroes. Ladies, gentlemen, and fellow creatives, please help me welcome none other than Mr. Aaron Owens. Aaron, take it away.
Hey, how is everyone doing?
Good.
I hope everyone is doing good.
We're good.
That's great to hear. So again, tonight is going to be a conversation, a very conversational style webinar. You know, it's not going to be all fancy with presentations and slides. The goal is to really be able to have a conversation and hope that if people have genuine questions and concerns and possible roadblocks that may be stopping them from actually successfully managing their own projects, that they get real life advice here and that I can actually provide them some type of feedback right here on the call. Okay, so I'm going to take you through some of, essentially, since this is a community of WordPress developers, my goal is to essentially take you through what managing a web project will look like. So let's make this, super targeted and make sure that we're not hitting you with any bland information. I want to, since your web developers are possibly creating a website, maybe for yourself or for someone else, how can you properly manage that aspect of your business? And then we'll think about how we can duplicate what we're talking about and how we can kind of scale that for multiple projects. So I encourage everyone to, if you have any questions, please jot them in the chat. As you're jotting them, my goal is going to be to, kind of reference back and say, hey, how can we stop and kind of answer those questions along the way so that we make sure that everyone leaves here getting answers to any questions that they may have. So if that's clear, I'll kind of dive in. And the first thing I want to kind of start on and talk about is, what is a project, right? So, a project, we hear different things like gigs and different things like that, but ultimately what a project is something that begins and something that ends. So you want something that essentially is going to have a start date and then has an end date. And that's one of the ways from the beginning that you can tell if this is a project or not. Something that has a start date but does not have an end date, 9 times out of 10 is more of a process. And that may be something operational, maybe outside of your wheelhouse, maybe not something that you actually do. So just being able to keep that simple thing in mind, does this have a start date and does this have an end date? That goes for clients that may hit you with, hey, I don't really know. I just know I need to get it done. That goes to making sure that they have an end date even before you get started. So who is a project manager? So myself, I'm a project manager, but honestly, I'm one of those type of people that I let people know that I have a role that everyone plays. Everyone on this call is a project manager. If you've ever successfully managed just say a party for a friend, for yourself, for your child, if you've ever managed to get together, if you ever organized and put something together, if you had to scope it out, outline it, if you had to figure out who was going to do what, when they was going to do it, essentially, you've already been managing projects. So the goal here is to really be able to take the information that you already know and that you're probably already utilizing and allow you to be a little bit more strategic with it and kind of, utilize that information directly on the projects that you're actually managing. So let's think about this for a minute. We're going to think about, we're going to be going through thinking about a web project. So I think about a web project, I think about a person reaching out to a possible freelancer or someone possibly wanting to create a site. And the first thing that you want to understand is, what is the expectations? Either you need to understand the expectations or you need to set them. And essentially, I like to recommend that we do both. So you want to understand the expectations of the person who wants it done. So just say you're building this for a client, we're going to use that scenario. You want to understand, what are they trying to accomplish with this site? What are their expectations? What will make this site something that will actually say, hey, you did a great job? And then you also want to set your own expectations as to how you work as a freelancer. So I'm one of those people, I'm a strong believer of freelancers treating themselves as businesses. So with that being said, I believe that we should come with processes that business owners are aware of, or clients, or whatever you want to call them, are aware of initially before a project even begins. So setting your expectations, that could be, hey, this is how I'm going to deliver this project to you. Maybe you use a certain format or a certain delivery method. This is how you're going to get this. Let's understand, maybe you have contracts. Maybe you have, some type of payment structure that you want to outline. This is you saying, hey, from the beginning, let me let you know that we will need to sign this piece of paper, whether that be an NDA, whether that be something that states that they're going to guarantee their payment, whether that be something that's going to state that they're going to pay half up front. Whatever your process may consist of, the goal is to make sure that you set that up front. A lot of times what I see from a freelance perspective, and I speak as a freelancer myself and someone that started my career doing so, when it comes to projects, a lot of times we feel like because we're the ones receiving the payment, sometimes that we have to kind of accept whatever a person may bring to us. Hey, I need to build Facebook tomorrow and I only got a $2,000 budget. That don't make sense. So the goal is to be able to have these type of expectations set in the beginning so that everyone could walk away at the end feeling like they actually accomplished what they were looking to accomplish. So again, on top of setting those expectations, you may have a point of contact that you want to talk to. You may have 5 people on the project, but you may want to talk to one person in particular, or may want to make sure that they talk to one person so that everybody is not giving you feedback from 5 different avenues, right? Imagine you sending over a concept to a client. They have 5 different stakeholders, and every single stakeholder sending you feedback from all different directions. The goal would be to make sure that you kind of cleared it out in the beginning so those type of things don't happen. If someone is sending you, if you want to be corresponded in a certain way, the goal is to make sure that you outline that in the beginning, set those expectations, because 9 times out of 10, what you want can happen, but if you don't ask for it in the beginning, it won't happen. And if you try to ask for it in the end or in the middle, 9 times out of 10, they're already going to be spoiled with the process you allowed them to have already, and they're probably not going to give you what you want. So the goal is to outline that in the beginning to make sure that everyone is clear and everybody understands. So now, before I go too far, again, remember that You can put any questions in the chat. Let me make sure I am okay. So if I am chipping, y'all definitely let me know. But you can put any question in the chat regarding anything I'm saying. I will take some time to slow down and kind of stop a little bit to make sure I answer any questions that you may have. So we talked about who is a project manager. We talked about, again, what is a project? We talked about setting expectations for a project. Now, I would want to understand is, how do you vet a project? How do you know if a project is even right for you, right? One time, one case you may have on this side where you want whatever the budget is allocated for the project. Maybe that's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for that project. But on the other end, you don't want to have to essentially have a project that costs you nightmares. You don't want a project coming in that's worth $5,000, but it costs you $15,000 worth of damages or headaches or nightmares, right? And you don't want to put yourself in that position. So how do you avoid that? One of the biggest ways I tell people to avoid that is by freelancers actually looking at the project and vetting that project. The same way business owners, places like Fiverr, Upwork, Elance, talk about how they vet creatives. How can creatives vet the business owner and say, hey, I want to make sure you're a good fit for me. It's cool that you're saying that you want to make sure I'm good for you, but how can I make sure that you are a good fit for me and my process and how I do business and my style and the type of work that I want to produce and the type of work that I want to be, proud of and be able to put on my portfolio, right? So the way you do that is by vetting, the project that's coming in, but also vetting the business owner. So if you have a person that's calling you already, you don't even get started, they calling you 2-3 times already, they blowing you up, they sending you a bunch of emails, sending you a bunch of messages, they're all over the place, they don't really know what they want, they're telling you that they want it to look good, but they don't know how they want it to look good, they don't really have any that may be examples, right? They may not just be following the process already. Those type of people, you will want to say, hey, I want to vet that type of person and what that can essentially, end up costing me in the long run, along with vetting this project. Again, go back to the example of you wanting Facebook, you want me to build a Facebook app for you, or you want me to build a Facebook, web app, but yet you have a $5,000 budget. You need to be able to vet that project and say, hey, based on this project, I don't think that you may not only have the budget, but maybe you don't have the actual content for the site. Maybe this site will be image heavy. It will be wording heavy. They don't have the wording to put behind here. Maybe they want a video site, but they don't have videos and they're not prepared for a video budget. And they're not looking to actually hire videographers or video editors to perform that service. These are the type of things you want to vet in the beginning, and you want to understand how is that going to essentially align with you and your process. So I'm going to look at a question real fast because, again, I want this to be very conversational. So I don't want y'all to feel like y'all have to, hold back. If you have a question, definitely I want to get it answered. So what a business requirements document help? What a business requirements document help? I mean, I think anything that you present in the beginning will help, because essentially in the beginning, the relationship has not established yet. No one has went over the budget. No one has went over scope. Nothing has occurred just yet. So everything is on the table. Everything is still flat out. It's still there. You can still negotiate. And until you actually get started, you have the ability to say, hey, just in case something does go wrong, I need to put this in place. Well, nothing's went wrong yet. So I'll sign that, no problem. But imagine what that looks like when something does go wrong. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get someone to sign a piece of paper that tells them this is what happens when something goes wrong after something goes wrong. You're going to have to be proactive in that measure and make sure that you can submit those type of things in the beginning. So if that's a business requirements document, if that's a process, if that's a project plan, if that's a scope, if that's an outline, if this is just the way we do business. The goal is to be able to let people know that, hey, this is how we operate. And if you want to operate with us, these are the rules that we hope that you abide by before we ever begin. Do you agree? So now, to go back to to vetting. So again, we know what a project is. We know what a project manager is. We understand that we need to set expectations before the project even begins. No different than you would want, again, set with you. Hey, if you was to go to a store and you had to stand in line for an hour, I'm pretty sure you would want to know that you need to stand in line before you get there, instead of actually getting there and finding out later. So set those expectations, vet those projects, vet those clients, and really understanding that, that leads to the mindset of all money isn't good money. And when I said it, I mean that, a lot of times we have projects coming in and we have the process, we have people right here, we have influx, but we need to understand that, hey, maybe we need to assess this first. Do we have the proper resources to actually outline this process? Do we have enough web developers on the team? Can we actually, complete that fix? Does that function even exist? Are these things even accessible? And really understand that before that even begins, so that you don't put yourself in the position, especially because you're thinking about yourself as a business. You don't want chargebacks. You don't want a bad reputation. So you want to make sure that you don't be in a position where somebody's trying to come back and say that you didn't do something because later on you found out that, hey, it was more than what you really expected it to be, but the money was good, so you took it. So now that comes to another thing, a very important aspect is budgeting. So a lot of people under budget and expect you to over deliver, right? And I want to say that again. A lot of people, business owners, that could be your cousin, that could be your brother, that could be your auntie, it doesn't really matter who it is. When they want something, they normally under budget for it, but expect you to over deliver for whatever budget they have. So with that being said, you really have to take into account, how does that look for your business? Because if you're taking numerous losses over and over again, eventually you're going to find yourself in a position where you're doing more work than the income that you're bringing in. So how do you take this mindset and kind of use this in your analyzing phase of what this project is? So now, one of the ways I would say that is really looking at the project and saying, hey, not only is what is your budget, and I say that very loosely because I want a lot of freelancers to become more comfortable asking that question. What is your budget? That is a great question to ask. It puts a lot of things on the table, and it allows people to really be able to kind of get away from hiding behind what that price may be. So before you even have to say, this is how much I would charge, what are you expecting to pay for something like this? How do you value this project, right? You're looking to revamp your entire website. You state that the objective of doing so is to bring in 100 new customers. 100 new customers essentially would bring you $1 million, but you only believe that you should allocate $200 to the project to build that site. This is something you would want to discuss in the beginning,
Question.
right? Go ahead.
And before I ask my question, I just want to say that if anybody else wants to ask a question, just indicate in the chat or raise your hand, and you can ask it verbally. You don't necessarily have to type the question. But now to my question. To backtrack a little, you spoke about the client maybe not having all the content necessary to go ahead with the project. Now, this is something that I face on a regular basis. Is there a way to manage the process of helping the client to put together the content? Is there a way to do that, and could that be a part of the project? Could that be something that you charge for?
Yes, that would be a separate project. So that would be a project itself. So it's almost like, hey, you want to do this, but before we do this, we kind of need to step back and do this, right? We need to do our due diligence first. So it's not that you can't assist them with doing so, but it's almost one of those things where it's like, until you do it, you can't really move forward.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
So for me, I feel like, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room when it comes to the fact that a lot of processes aren't established in a lot of businesses, and a lot of freelancers may not already have their own process in place. So there's a lot of room there for you to either establish those processes for people, even say, hey, we call it the janitor effect. You go in a business, you came in there because they hired you to sweep the floor, but when you were there, you noticed that the light was busted. Then you noticed that the AC wasn't working. And then now you started to say, hey, well, I can do those things for you as well. I know you only called me for this, but I can also do those. So putting yourself in those type of positions to say, hey, I know you wanted to do A, B, and C, but, not only can, that you need to do this, but I can do it, right? And it's one of those things where I think that a lot of people sometimes feel like, because a lot of business owners come and they want it like yesterday. They want everything yesterday. And with that mindset, it almost puts us as creators in a rushing mindset, a rushing space. So even if you have a process, sometimes you like to speed it up a little bit, because even places like Fiverr with express delivery and all type of craziness like this make people feel like they can get top quality work tomorrow. And in reality, that's not the case. Right? There is a process, there's due diligence that need to happen. And sometimes a client will benefit, not even just sometimes, most of the time, clients will benefit more so from you telling them to slow down so that they can do it right. So I hope that makes sense to anybody that may have had a similar question to that. And with that being said, I'm gonna keep moving. But, again, to reiterate what he stated, if you have any other questions, you can drop them in the chat, or you can just tell me that you have a question. And again, I'll stop, answer that question, and kind of jump back on task. So with that being said, all of those things that we talked about just now, we haven't even started the project yet, at least from a business owner perspective, because in their mind, the project starts when you start to do some work. But there's some work that needs to be done before the work begins. So we had to get that out the way of vetting, of understanding who they are, what was happening, expectations, setting them, receiving them, kind of getting all of these things outlined before we could even say yay or nay. So now let's say that we did, entertain this project. The process is clear. They are clear. The expectations is understood. They understand what you're trying to deliver. They value that. Where do we go from there? So the goal would be to use a method, what we call in project management, the SMART method. So the SMART method is to really understand, exactly what's happening with this project, essentially a checklist as you get the ball rolling. So to begin, you'll want to understand how specific what they're trying to accomplish is. So you don't want to be in a position where someone is telling you that they just want to make something, but they don't know what it is. That doesn't help you. That sends you as a creative on a fishing expedition, and that's not what you're trying to do. You have other clients and other things that you're trying to do. You also have to market yourself, sell yourself, and brand yourself. You don't have time to try to understand, these things if they don't already understand them. So if they don't, your goal is to help them by saying, we need to get very specific to what your objective is, what you're trying to accomplish, and why you're trying to accomplish it. On top of that, we want to understand, is it measurable? So not only is it specific, but the M is measurable. Can we quantify if this project is a success or not? If I completed this project for you right now, what does a completed successful, I'm gonna brag to my friends about this, what does that look like to you as a business owner, a client, a brother, a mother, or whoever? And that may be, hey, I need, by the time a person get here, just say you're building a landing page, I need them to set this. I need a funnel that looks like this. I need them to be able to, click a call to action. I need a pop-up. I need a schedule to happen. Whatever the case may be, whatever that objective is, we want to understand how measurable that is, because we want to say, hey, if you're looking for new clients, if you're looking to rank higher in SEO, if you're looking for, additional leads, If you're looking for more conversions, you want to be able to understand when you've been able to say, hey, I'm done. And be able to know that scope is complete, because scope creeping from a freelance standpoint is real. And I want to be very, very, very frank with that. Business owners will creep additional items into the scope along the way if they didn't have a very clear on what success looks like from the beginning. And if that doesn't make any sense, please let me know, because that to me is very, very important. Scope creeping can really hinder your business. And if you aren't, really keeping that in mind, it can really cost you a lot. So now, on top of that, so now we know it's specific. We know that it is measurable. Now, for me, I want to know also, is it obtainable? Is your goal obtainable, right? So you want to build this within this time, and you want to maybe have these functions. So as developers, you have people who come and say, hey, I may want a, some type of knowledge-based center. I may want some type of blog. I may want some type of, again, web app, different things like that. You want to be able to understand, is this obtainable? Can this happen? Does this function exist? Is this possible, right? Is this realistic? And you want to make sure that's clearly understood from the beginning. If you had to take a little bit of extra time to say, hey, I need to find out if that feature is even available. You want to tie in an API and do some things that I don't even know if the API is public. You may have some different aspects about what you're looking for, but we need to make sure that it's actually something that we can accomplish. So another thing is, with goals in mind, is this relevant? So we know it's specific, we know it's measurable, it's obtainable, right? Now, again, is it relevant? Is it something that is relevant to what they're trying to accomplish and what they're doing at the moment? Because you don't want to be in a position where this is something that does not fit their goals, and they at the end blame you because it didn't accomplish what they were actually trying to do. And now the last one in the SMART methodology would be T, for time bound. So does this project, going back to the beginning, does it have an end date? Does it have an end date? And is that end date clear? Is it something that we can reach? Is it something that everybody is aware of? And are we on track to actually meet it? So to go back again, SMART methodology, specific, measurable, obtainable. We want it to be relevant, and we want it to be time bound. And please, y'all let me know if y'all have any questions regarding that methodology and how you can include that into your business to understand how to better manage your projects.
Well, this question is not about the methodology itself, but prior to that, while you're having these discussions with the client, are you charging the client? Has the project already started by the time you're having these discussions?
So for me, I would say that I would have that allocated into my onboarding process as a freelancer. So I would be looking at my process and saying, hey, this is what it's going to take to onboard a person, because this is almost a cost to acquire a customer. Okay. And you have to keep that in mind. I am paying essentially this much to acquire a customer. And for me, myself, that may be lunches. I'm Mr. Lunch on me. So I'm the person that, hey, I'll take 20 people to lunch, knowing that maybe 3 or 4 of them may sign up. And those 3 or 4 may pay for all of those 20 lunches that I done went to. So the goal is to have that inside of your onboarding process so that you can already have that factored into how much it costs to acquire that customer. So you're putting that into the beginning aspect of it. However, you do want to have a cutoff, right? You do want to have a cutoff. You do have to have some type of expectations for your customers. So maybe you expect them to at least know how to work Gmail. You expect them to know how to work Google Drive. You expect them to know how to work Google Docs. You expect them to know how to work certain things. And that's almost the customer base you want, because if not, you find yourself teaching more than executing, right? More than actually doing the work, you find yourself now saying, hey, I might as well, I'm not even developing sites. I might as well host webinars. and teach y'all how to create your own process and different things like that, or how to work Outlook. That's not what I would say that any of y'all are in business for. I would hope not. And if you are, I hope you're charging for it.
I have a question to add
Go ahead.
to that. So generally speaking, when a client comes, right, they generally say, okay, this is what I'd like, right? How much would it cost to do this type of development? So based on what you've been saying so far, right, we charge them for the discovery process, because first we need to ensure that, okay, what they want is realistic and so forth. So is it a case that we go ahead and do our due diligence, do the research, then after doing that, now we create that price structure and include the onboarding fee into that?
Well, I would say, first of all, all right, so first and foremost, I would look at yourself as a business and understand that you can't wait to have a customer to build the process. If you was to open up a store today, you don't want to wait till a customer walks in to say, hey, well, this is how let's figure out how we're going to ring you up. Let's figure out how we figure out if our inventory are, let's figure out none of these different things. You want to at least be learning from those things, having it already implemented in some kind of way, and saying, hey, as we see it in motion, we can adjust. So I would say you already should have your own process, your own expectations set. You should already have your own onboarding. And again, I would really say that a lot of your onboarding should already be included in how much you charge, because in reality, this is something that should be wash, rinse, and repeat. So it should be something that's included in your fee. And then you should have a cutoff where, hey, this is where we kind of, like, hey, this is where we go from kind of assisting you in setup to now teaching you how to just send us an email, right? So, and have a very clear, hey, this is what this is, and even in the expectations, I would challenge you to say, this is what we're here for from support. This is how we support our clientele. So along this process, you may hear some verbiage that you don't understand. We're here to clarify those things for you. We're here to inform you of those things. We're here to help you with that. These are the things that we will do along the process, and these are the things that we do not cover. I can, send you a YouTube video. You may even have that in your welcome email, because I encourage a lot of people to welcome their customers in an email, something that everybody can go back to and see. And, in the beginning of the process, again, just say this is the end. They can go back and say, hey, you remember when I sent you that email that talked about all these different things? This is what I'm following. This is the process. I know you kind of deviated along the way, but this is what I'm sticking to. And if we go outside of that realm, it'll have to be charged. You'll have to be charged for on either side. So I hope that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks for that.
So any more questions? I would love any specific questions to your projects, any things that you're handling, you're dealing with, whether that be, because from a project management standpoint, we are salesmen on one end and we are project managers on the other. So both of those realms kind of tie into what you have to do by default. As a freelancer, you are essentially tasked with those things, even if that's not what you sign up to do. So if you have any questions or you've been dealing with any of those things, please let me know. I'm more than happy to assist.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so with a customer, in the beginning, you're asking them what their budget is, but they may not really have a clue, right, in terms of the scope of what it is they need to be done, right? So if they have a budget, let's say they think of, they may have allocated $1,000 for development or whatever, but then after speaking to them, it turns out that it's going to be double or triple that. How do you have that discussion with them?
Actually, so that's actually a really good one. So I like those type of situations because it goes back to value. Number one, how did they get to this $1,000, right? Like, how did they get to this $1,000? Do they just have only $1,000? And they said that, I only have $1,000. So that's what I'm valuing the project at. Or did they actually say, that I think that this project is only valued at $1,000, right? So I think that those are two different things there, because some people just pick up and say, this is all I got, and this is what and I want you to make it work, but they don't walk into the store and say that. They don't walk into the store and buy Jordans and say that I only have $10. Can you make it work? So essentially, you have to be able to make sure that you're, again, aligning yourself as a business to where they respect the fact that their budget should be based on the value of the project, not based on what they have in their pocket. That those are completely different valuations. And so for me, that would be first and foremost. And number two, if a person does have a lower budget than what it takes, explain why. Hey, you originally what you were trying to do is do this, and this. All of those things are possible. However, one of the things I wanted to let you know is that the budget that you have right now, we need to get from A to Z. However, your budget only allows us to get from A to C. We can get from A to C. We can do that, and we can have all of that done for you. We can do it in this time, this day. We ain't even talking about the rest no more. We ready to sell you on this. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna stop you. Whoa. But I didn't ask for only a half a website. I wanted the whole thing. Well, the whole thing costs more than $1,000. The whole thing is gonna cost this much. What you have a budget for is only going to be able to get you this much. And they need to clearly understand, again, it's a difference between what you have in your pocket and what the value of this project actually is. Let me know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. One other thing on that, in terms of determining your how much you're going to charge them, it will vary depending on what they would think it's valued, in terms of looking at the numbers. They expect this many more customers or this much more traffic. It's going to be adjusted based on those numbers, right?
Yeah, so I would say that's just for me, that's just a part of the vetting process. Let me understand your mind. Your goal is to do this, because I like to get all of these things out before I'm talking price. Because if you tell me that, you want this, you want that, you see the value in this, you understand the value in this, you know somebody else who did it and they made this and that happened, but then you come to me and tell me that you only value it at $1,000, then I'm going to be using everything you already told me against you. Well, how did you come to that figure when you said that you seen this and you seen this person doing this? Are you seeing that the return on investment was $40K, but you need to invest a certain amount to get there? Like, I'm starting to challenge now. I'm challenging you. What you're telling me based off of, again, what you said. You already said it. I've already put you in a position to ask you, hey, what is your goals? Why is this important to you? How do you value this? What do you believe that this will bring you in return? What type of ROI do you see for this project? And if there's some, inspiration, you have some other people that you already seen doing this, but then you come to me with a lower price. So for me, I'm challenging that based off what you said. But then also, number two, I am putting myself in a place where everybody is not going to have the same project. I mean, the same fee. Nobody on here probably has the same exact fee. So I would say you have to first come with your bottom line based on your price, your skills, how long it's going to take you to do it, right? You're going to have that in you already. And everyone here has to assess that before a client, like I said before they walk in the door. Don't try to build the store after they get in. Build the store first, and then let them walk into a store that you have to modify along the way, right? That you have to create, you have to better the process, but don't try to build it up around them. So essentially, I would just be very careful when it comes to budgeting, because in reality, if you assess your lifestyle, your situation, how long it's going to take for you to do this, you have to at least meet that threshold. And you can't go no lower than that. Or essentially, you're in the negative. And if you had a product, look at yourself like a business. If you had a product, I couldn't keep coming to you and saying, hey, this is worth $200, but I want to buy it for $100. If I do that 5 times, you are already on the way to going out of business. Sometimes we don't quantify it that way because as freelancers, we don't see it that way because we're not essentially exchanging one thing for another. But you're selling something even more important, which is your time. And that has to be assessed in the beginning.
Thank you.
Any other questions, especially specific to your project? If you have something that you're dealing with, something that you're working on right now, again, whether that's around the project management aspect after the project gets in, or if that's even aligning yourself to be able to even get those projects in the door, let's kind of discuss. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move along to, we talked about the SMART methodology.
Yeah,
so
before
kind
you
of
do
just
that,
to recap.
quick
Go ahead.
question, and in relation to the SMART methodology. Now, you said that the goals of the project should be specific and measurable, right? Now, one problem that I tend to come across is that the client, perhaps through conversation with the client, you're able to work out specific and measurable goals, but then the client asks you to include other things in a project that doesn't contribute to the goals of the project. That's of course going to take time and money. How do you manage that conversation with the client to ensure that the project stays focused on those specific and measurable goals?
Okay, so remember, in the beginning, we're setting these expectations. We're essentially scoping out what they're trying to accomplish. So this is where your discretion comes in at, because if you create a scope that includes those things, then you're essentially been paid to do those things. But now if you have created a scope that does not include those tasks, then the goal for you now is to be able to let clients know that, hey, everything that you're saying sounds great. All of it is possible. I already see ways that we can accomplish it. However, let's finish up this scope of work that we have already. This should be ending around this time frame, and then we can discuss this. Now, if it's something that's been forgotten, and maybe it needs to happen before something else happens, then the goal is to say, halt. We need to stop now, and we need to reevaluate. So basically just say we went through the project, it was supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, but we went from 1, 2, 4. 3 was never included in the scope. But we later discover that from a client's expectations, 3 is mandatory. Now, we need to make sure we let them understand that because this is something that may need to be done before you get to 4, we need to pause now, reevaluate what 3 is, scope that, budget that, timeline that, and treat it as its own separate project, and then come back to the project that we were working on. So you either have to pause, or you have to make sure that they understand that this is going to be something that happens afterwards. Now, if you have the resources to say, hey, Tommy, Tony, whoever, can you get on this project? They just came in with, you can budget that, still go through that same process with them, but make sure now that it's working, maybe simultaneously while you're still working. So maybe you don't have to stop working to start it. But if it's just you, don't be afraid to pause them and say, hey, we need to stop. We now need to focus on 3. We need to handle that, or we need to let us continue the entire scope that we've already outlined, that you've already paid 50%, 75%, whatever for already. And we need to now reevaluate that after this project is over. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I think that was Ron, right? So, and again, this is, setting expectations. Remember, nobody is going to sign a paper that says this is what we're going to do when something goes wrong after something goes wrong. You have to give that to them ahead of time, and 9 times out of 10, they will sign anything. Imagine right now nobody could have pictured the pandemic happening. If somebody was to say, before this happened, sign a document that says that you still gonna work through a national disaster or a pandemic, you probably been like, man, what's the likelihood of that? I can sign that. Those are no worries. You don't see those things happening. But in the middle of the pandemic, you would have never did it. You wouldn't have signed a piece of paper that said you might have to work while you're sick or while you have to take care of your loved ones or whatever the case may be. You won't do it afterwards. So the same thing, you have to essentially provide them that same courtesy and understand that 9 times out of 10, they will not care to protect your process after the process has already been broken. So if that's clear, I'm going to move on to the next segment, which would be resources. So one of the things I like to do is really understand the resources of a project. And as freelancers, this is where again, treating yourself as a business, building connections, building a network, having people in place to where but also understanding when you don't have those things in place. So if a person comes in and they need things that you don't currently have, sometimes it's easier to just say, hey, I got a $10,000 budget in front of me. I know I can figure it out. If I just take the project, I'll make it happen. Excuse me. And I'm saying that because I've done it several times. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But most of the time, it was just a flip of the coin, meaning that it really was out of my hands. And a lot of times, the reason why that is because sometimes we don't assess what our resources are or what resources may be needed before a project even begins. What resources do you have? What resources do you have available? How fast can you deploy those resources? And in making sure that is something that can be clearly, kind of expressed to the business owner. So to use a website for an example, just say you're a web developer, but they need you to build the entire site. This site should begin in something like Figma, where it's kind of sketched out, kind of drawn out, wireframed out, maybe Photoshop. It should now be taken over to a designer should now hold that project and essentially work together with you, maybe PSD to HTML that, or do something in that fashion, depending on how your workflow is. A content writer may need to be there to be able to start dishing some content inside of here. And there may be some marketing that needs to happen. And this customer may say, hey, can you build some landing pages into this website? So I want to actually market this. I want to get people here. So now you have marketing components of this when it comes to you building out a funnel and how this page is going to convert. These are 4 different roles. There may be some of you that can play multiple roles, and that's great. But if you play one of those roles or only a few, do you have the rest? And do you have the rest before the project even begins? Or do they have the rest? So it doesn't always have to be on you. You can go and say, hey, you can depend on me for this, and I'm gonna work with your team for that. Your team can handle this portion of it, and our team will handle this. And this is how we're going to collaborate and come together. However, those resources are clearly understood and clearly defined before the project begins, because you don't want to be in a place where you need them and you don't have them. Imagine Uber, you need a ride, but you don't have any drivers to get you there. You want to be able to know already ahead of time that you can actually make that trip and you can actually get it done. So resourcing to me is really huge, because most web projects, unless you are a jack of all trades, may require some other aspects or some other talent involved. And being able to really recognize that ahead of time is going to be crucial to your development. So let me know if that's clear. For me, I really feel like that's something that should be stressed, and it's something that all of y'all are already here, a resource to one another. And I believe that that's something that that you can really utilize if you keep it kind of in the front of your mind as you get going. So now the next portion I want to talk about is timeline. So timeline for me is crucial. And I gotta say that so many times because it really, really is. And the reason being is because we said that we are managing a project. We've already stated that in order for it to be a project, it has to have an end date. It has to start and it has to end. So if this project does not have some type of timeline with some type of deadline attached, then we are going to be spinning in circles and possibly working on this forever. So this is really, really important here with how you outline your timeline, how you set your milestones, and how you keep your customers informed along the way. So with that timeline, the goal there is to really be able to make sure that you clearly set a timeline that fits not just the business owner's schedule. Because remember, 9 times out of 10, what they told you was what they proposed to you. You have an ability as someone who is bringing value to their business to propose something in return. You need this by Friday. All right, I can get it to you by Monday. You need it right now. All right, I can get it to you by the end of the day. And be able to really be able to stand up and own that, because in reality, your timelines have to work for your business, not just theirs. It has to be something to where if you are setting timelines up, that you are properly aligning them to where you are making sure that all of your projects are going to be touched. Maybe you have a workflow. Yo, I touch all of my projects once a day, or maybe I touch all of them at least once a week. Or maybe I have maintenance contracts, so I have the maintenance on Tuesdays, but this person wants this done on Tuesday. You can't do it. You can't deliver on Tuesday if you already have a full day on Tuesday. And sometimes you have to be very frank with customers and letting them know that, hey, this is something that can be done and will be done, but will be delivered this day. And 9 times out of 10, that's normally a few hours, a few days. That's normally not too far off from what they were looking for in the first place, but it gives you some cushion. And it also gives you the ability to make sure that you are not stressing. One of the biggest things I see with people creating very tight timelines for themselves is that they don't allow themselves to be creative. I'm assuming that all of y'all on this line want to be able to bring your creative ability to the project that you're on. You want to be proud of this project. And I'm pretty sure that most of the time, the description of the project that the client brings to you is not something you could put on your portfolio page. It's when you start giving them a little feedback. Oh, maybe we should move it over here. Maybe we should do a little bit of that. What if we change that color? That's when it starts to really look good, because most people don't necessarily know what they want from the beginning. So what happens is, for you to be able to do those things, you have to be able to be fluid. You have to feel creative. You have to not feel like you have to be behind the desk 24 hours a day, working, coding, looking up this, YouTube and that. You have to feel like you have enough time to relax. Hey, do you have a family? Do you want to chill with your kids, your wife, your husband, whoever that may be? Do you have those times in there? Maybe you want date night, all of those type of things. As a freelancer, your job is at your house. So the fact that your job is at your house schedule got to be there first. That's solid. And then your timeline has to essentially work around that. You can't schedule to deliver something, but you got to take little man to soccer. That's just not going to work. And you ain't going to sacrifice that to go ahead and deliver that. I would hope that you won't continuously do so, because you got to balance, right? So the goal is to be able to make sure that your timelines are clearly defined, but that they match your schedule and that you give yourself some cushion. So if you know that this project is going to take 2 weeks to complete, the customer has just say a week and a half timeline, you let them know that it's going to take 2, but you're like, hey, what if 2.5, maybe 3? When they ask you that deadline, you give yourself enough wiggle room, because guess what? What if you have a problem that you run into that you haven't quite solved yet? What if you have to get what if you have to put in some tickets to get some support on maybe a theme or some different things in WordPress that you actually need some assistance with. These type of things need to be included in your timeline because essentially they are going to happen. 9 times out of 10, they've already happened, but the difference is we might not have included them. We might have just had to tell a person, hey, I'm waiting on this, or this is what's happening next, versus already clearly outlining that this is the time, again, it's going to take. This is how much time I tell you it's going to take, knowing that we may hit the time I tell you because there may be some uncertainties in between. And if not, I just have enough time to relax. I'm not going crazy. I'm not project to project to project. I'm actually giving myself enough time to even turn off. Some of us are managing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects at a time. How do you efficiently and effectively switch and swap between them if you have no time in between? Because you've locked all of your timelines down so tight because you want to supersede when 9 times out of 10, this customer can wait a day. They can wait a few hours. They can possibly wait a week. And again, going back to the beginning of what we stated about setting expectations, if you do this in the beginning, they won't even have a concern. They won't even be calling you. I manage a bunch of projects myself on a daily basis, yet the entire time I've been on the line with y'all, my phone hasn't rung. The reason why is because expectations are already set on how I manage my time and how I dedicate my time to my projects. How can we all do the same? Y'all let me know if y'all have any questions around timeline, because to me, again, very, very important topic that really, really goes into the work-life balance of a freelancer. How can you effectively be in your family, doing other things, maybe even having a full-time job, maybe having other avenues, but still be able to get your projects done? Any questions around that topic? Or any questions in general? If not, I'm going to move on to the next, which is project planning. So for me, project planning is kind of like the little brother, big brother to timeline. It's one of those things that kind of go hand in hand, but it's something that's tangible. And it's something that essentially, if you can create in the beginning, you can actually pass along to a client and actually say that, hey, here is something you can reference and look at and understand what's happening in your project. This is something that you can say, this is the plan and this is how it's going to go. These may be the dates of text. So all of the expectations and all of the things that we've seen, that we talked about so far, now we put them in a document, a piece of paper. We put them in an email. We put them into something that essentially now is kind of governing, that we can use to hold and say, today is the what? The 13th. If you call me and tell me, why are you not done? But this paper say that I shouldn't be done until the 15th. I can hold you to that. And you can do the same thing to me. But 9 times out of 10, you need it for your protection first, because you need to be able to make sure that a person doesn't get rushed along the way. They don't get other goals. They don't see somebody else doing something and say, oh man, I think I'm missing out. Man, I know I told you I needed it in 3 weeks, but man, I need that tomorrow. I know I told you, but I need this. Nah. To be honest with you, I'm documentation. What did we agree to in the beginning? This is what we agreed to. This is how we agreed to it. And if we did agree to it, let's make sure that we can kind of keep that plan in place so that we know that we're effectively managing and accomplishing your goals. So that one is one of those things that's important, but it summarizes everything that we've already began to talk about. It's just now putting it in something that you can actually make tangible and that they can be held to in you as well. So again, y'all have any questions, please let me know. I'm actually getting to the end. I want to talk about, before I open up the floor to just questions in general, I want to start talking about some red flags. And I want to kind of end with just kind of talking about what red flags look like and what kind of red flags you need to kind of be on the lookout for as a freelancer to effectively manage your projects. So one of those things is knowing that freelancers normally have multiple projects in their pipeline. How can you effectively manage these projects, or how can you avoid red flags in effectively managing these projects? Would be making sure that your projects do not all end or begin at the same time. So one of those things is like, if you are starting to say, if you have 5 web projects right now, if you have in your business stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, milestone 1, 2, 3, level 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter how you outline it. If you have these different things in place, making sure that you don't have all of your projects at level 1 right now. So you don't have all of your projects on the onboarding phase. You don't have all of your projects in a phase, maybe level 3, where you are heavily have to dive in and actually code something. You have to actually be in there, and this is something that you're literally this is your problem solving phase maybe. You don't want 4, 5, 6 problem solving projects in that same phase. Yes, they may all go through that phase, but can they go through those phases at different points in times? So can you make sure that you say, hey, I have 3 projects in the onboarding phase right now. I know that these 3 projects are probably going to end around that how would I say that again, that fix it phase, right? Or that, problem solving phase at the same time. How can I avoid that? Maybe I don't add no more projects, or maybe I don't take 3 from the beginning. Maybe I say, hey, I'll only take 1 at the onboarding phase. Then when this moves to phase 2, I'll take another one at phase 1. And when this one moves to phase 3, I'll take another one at stage 2, and then move another one to stage 1. And you have to essentially put yourself on a flow to where your projects now are getting done, but they aren't stressing you out because they're all at the same level. So if you're seeing your projects all at the same phase, that's a red flag that you are probably not effectively managing your projects correctly. So keep that in mind. Another thing is, did you create a capacity for yourself? If you have no capacity, if any of y'all have kids, if you go to take your kid to the daycare has a capacity level. Hey, this many kids to this many adults. We need this many adults to have this many kids. You have to look at yourself and say the same thing. Hey, I am only one person. How many projects can I effectively manage? Can I effectively manage 20? 9 times out of 10, especially as a web developer, you probably cannot, especially if they're all at the same phase. So the goal would be to give yourself some type of capacity level to where you can say, hey, it's time to outsource. It's time to resource. It's time to pull into my network of people like here and say, hey, would someone else like to, jump on this project? Can I get some assistance? Because I've reached a level to where now my quality is going to start to decline because I want to increase my quantity. And that's not something that I would think that, developers would be proud of putting in their portfolio if that quality is not here. So putting that capacity in place, if you don't have some type of, hey, this is my limit, that might be a red flag that you aren't successfully or properly managing your projects correctly. Another thing is really understanding that are you taking on every type of project, right? It's every type of project coming in. Are you the type of person that's the jack of all trades doing everything, but you maybe want to specialize in something? Are you taking any project in or on, even if it means that you have to completely relearn every time you get a new project? Again, I'll give you an example. Just say you're a developer that says, you know what? Well, this is my expertise. This is what I do well. This is my market. And I want to essentially build and design or develop for that market. But you find yourself being a developer that takes in every single project that comes to you because maybe the money, maybe it's an obligation, maybe it's a friend, a family, maybe you want to get the project done, maybe you may have some interest in it. Whatever the case may be, if you find yourself in a position where you are just taking on every project, that may be a red flag that you aren't vetting the projects that are coming in the door, and you aren't effectively managing those projects and those expectations, because 9 times out of 10, you're probably overloading yourself and overworking yourself, or having to put yourself in a position where you're repeatedly learning instead of having to actually get things done. So there's several other red flags, but I want to kind of open the floor and give people a chance to ask any questions that they may have. And as we kind of get to, wrapping up, let me know what y'all think. Let me know if y'all have any feedback. Let me know if any of these topics we talked about is something that you would like a little bit more clarity on.
Well, my main idea here, what I'm thinking here is that oftentimes projects, you may want to take on a project, but it doesn't out the gate. It doesn't meet all these requirements perfectly. What do you need to have? Well, let's say, is there a template, or are there specific things that you need to have in a contract, for instance, that will communicate to the client that the project has to be specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, and time-bound? What are the various sections of a contract that address those issues? So that's a multi-part question there.
Okay, so first you have the ability to put that in a contract. If it's something that you want to bind them to and letting them, and maybe it's something that comes with something that they have to do, right? So you have to deliver on this time, or you have to deliver within this time, or, if something has to get done by a certain standard. I would say a contract is never a wrong way to go. However, I would also say that just setting expectations and letting people know that, hey, from the beginning, you can take people through. Just say you can consider it, again, that onboarding process. It could be considered a web demonstration. It can be considered some type of demo of the understanding of how this project is going to go. And I think that can happen in the beginning, and it can be followed up with a welcome email of, hey, this is what's happening next. It can be put into also the proposal sent over. It can be put into the contract as well, but it should be something that is wash, rinse, and repeat. It should be something that if a person comes in right now and another person comes in tomorrow, you can use it on both. Their project shouldn't have to be the same for you to use this template. You should be able to create something that meets those standards of your business and of your process. And it needs to be something that can be for almost any business and almost any process, or any project, because essentially you want to put yourself in a position to where you say, hey, I am someone who brings value. I can do everything you want to get done. However, I need to make sure the same way you want to make sure that I'm a good fit for you. Freelancers hold the ability to make sure that business owners and projects are a good fit for them. You hold that power. That is something that I would say, if you don't feel you hold that power, let's talk about it, because you need to regain it tonight. This is something that I need you to completely understand. Business owners need creatives just as much as creatives need business owners. If all the creatives left Fiverr right now, Upwork, Elance, and any other platform, right now, all the business owners, where they going? They're following wherever those creatives go, because creatives hold the power. However, most creatives look at it because they're the ones being paid. They look at it as if they're the ones getting the favor done for them. That is not the case. You are providing the favor and you're being paid for that favor. They are actually in reality more likely getting blessed by working with you than someone else, because even right now you're taking the time to master your craft and get better. You can easily let people know, if these terms don't work for you, there is someone I can recommend you to. I am very good with giving people an out. I will turn down more business than I take because I want to be able to sleep. I want to be able to relax. I want to be able to take my kids out. I don't want you having to stress me, bother me. I want you to know that I'm going to get it done. It's going to be of high quality. It's going to be on the time that the deadline that we agreed upon. However, you don't have to call me at 10 o'clock to check on it. You don't have to send me 5 emails. And the reason being is because expectations were set enough to where I let you know that I'm just as valuable as you. And I let you know that in the beginning. And I let you know that if that is not something that you're okay with, then maybe this might not be something that's beneficial for both of us, because this is not something that just has to be beneficial for you. It has to be beneficial for both of us, the creative and the business owner. And if it's not, you have to be able to stand firm by saying that, hey, my expectations, my what I'm seeing as far as my contracts, how I get things done, you don't agree, we can't work. So essentially, to answer that 2-part question, just in that summarized format, is to say that you have to be able to, number one, be proactive. Again, don't build the store when they get in, build the store before they walk through the door, build the process in there. Take the time to say, even in the call, hey, it's nice talking to you, John. Well, let me kind of run through my disclaimer real quick. My disclaimer is just to let you know, this is how I work, this is how this happens, this is how this happens, this is how this normally works. And for me, my disclaimer is, look, as your creative project manager, I'm not here to be a yes man. I'm not here to be a doormat. I'm not here to be someone that you can step on and just tell what to do, because my goal is to actually help you solve your problems. My goal is to make sure that the things you want to get done, they get done. And they get done and with the budget, or hopefully around that budget that you want to do it in. And in order for me to do that, I have to be allowed creative freedom. I have to be allowed the freedom to be able to say, hey, here are my demands. Here's how I work. Here's how I don't work. And do you agree? Yay or nay? And 9 times out of 10, I'm telling y'all, turn down a couple bad clients. The blessing ones will just come and just be super easy. It's always the $200 clients that give you more trouble than the $2,000 clients. I need y'all to completely understand that. So be very mindful that it's okay to turn them down, because in reality, they're making space for someone else. Tell me, Ron, does that answer your question? I hope it did.
Yeah, it does.
So if anybody else has any questions, I'm answering any questions specific to your project. It could be specific to the topics we talked about tonight, or it could be just something you may be dealing with in your current project. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to create this process. Where do you begin? How do you get established? Is there some resources you need to pull together? Maybe you want to figure out, how do you, is this something that you should be doing? Hey, this sounds like a whole bunch of stuff I didn't even want to do. Should I be outsourcing my project management? Should someone else be managing my project? Because, hey, I just want to do the work. These are things that, again, as you go through this process, and as you're building this store, and as you're tweaking this process, you're going to be able to make those decisions. So if I can help anyone with any questions, I'm definitely here for you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for all the insight. It's not project specific, but I just want to find out if you have any recommended resource resources that you have or know of that someone could use to help guide their project management activities, or even create a structured project plan when for onboarding, whether for creating successful timeline, or just managing capacity. Do you have any such resources?
For sure. So you have things like Asana, right? Which is actually a project management software that you could utilize for your projects. You have things that, now that's a more robust software solution, right? You have, things that are maybe a little bit smaller, like Inbox. I mean, yeah, like I think it's Inbox, or what is it? Like Microsoft To Do, right? So Microsoft To Do, which used to be Wunderlist, I used to love, but now Microsoft took it over. Microsoft To Do is essentially like a task list. You can assign dates, you can assign reminders, you can assign, not only just the tasks you have to get done, but you can also put in subtasks within that task to be able to get that done. You can collaborate with others, so you can share that task or that list with someone else. And it's a much more simplistic, style, because, a place like Asana could get a little bit busy. You do have several different project management apps, but I would say, the biggest thing that I would recommend is understanding first, how do you plan on managing your process? When a project comes in, the biggest thing you should think about is this: when this happens, what happens next? When a person comes in, what happens after they come in? If they come in saying that they submit a form, okay, we get on the line with them. We get on the line with them. Okay, what do we do when we get on the line with them? We set the expectations. We provide the outline. We do all of these different things. Now you start to say, okay, well, I know I'm going to do these things over and over again. I'm already doing these things over and over again. How can I create a process behind that? How can I use something like maybe Notion, for example, to be able to outline this process and be able to make it more easily accessible, because I have this process created and all I have to do is say, oh, a customer's coming in. Let me click this, open that up. Okay, this is what I do now. This is what I do after that. This is what I got to do after that. And this is what I need to talk to after that. And you kind of start creating that checklist. The same way I tell people who have a cooking business, or to say catering, it's like, hey, if you cook it, take a picture. You should be posting it on social media. If you are doing a project, you should be creating the process for that project simultaneously. If you are doing it, you should be creating. You shouldn't have a project that come in that you aren't learning from, and that you aren't establishing or tweaking your process as you're building and going through that project. There shouldn't be any project walking through the door doing that where you are just saying, I don't need to tweak or adjust my process at all, or maybe this was easy or simple. Hey, 9 times out of 10, if it happens again, you want to make sure that it's wash, rinse, and repeat. How can you do so? Because that's when your money starts to really show itself. When you used to do 20 hours worth of work for $2,000, but now you do 5 hours of work for $2,000, because your process eliminates so many hours that you used to spend getting this project up and running, or either managing this process along the way.
Noted with thanks. And yes, for tool base, it's definitely to click up. I tend to use and tend to recommend. And the question was geared towards of the process building, which you answered wonderfully. But also, like for example, when come on to learn any technology, even cooking, you tend to do a Google search, find the ingredients, they tell you the process, tell you things that you can mix, mingle, and so forth. So what I was really asking for, like process building, do you know of any like best practice templates that we can take a look look at, know, understand a bit more of like the questions one should really ask, similar to all of the questions you mentioned, but just like a written or something that we can, you know, take a look at, and then mix and mingle the different best practices, principles and things to consider to really create and define our own process from others processes. So yeah, templates for process building is what I was asking about.
Okay, so I don't necessarily have a resource that I could think of off the top of my head. Most of these things are normally created, created as need, as they're needed. However, what I could say is, kind of going over what we went through tonight. If what I can do is I can actually put together something to where we take the document that we kind of use as a template throughout this conversation, these talking points, and kind of put them into like some type of PDF that could possibly be sent out to the group at a later time. And hopefully that can be some type of, just some leave behind that you can use to say, hey, these are things that you can think about and that you can expand upon in the future.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful.
If there's some things that you would want to add, that you would want to, speak about or have added in there, you talked about, we talked about software, different things like that. I'll touch on some of these different features and some of these different aspects. If there's anything that anybody else can think of, either you could list it in the chat, or you can let me know, and I'll try to kind of touch on that point and some type of leave behind that again can be passed along and hopefully can begin being some type of checklist, some type of rough outline that you can take and make specific to your business.
There is a question in the chat for you, Aaron.
Can you provide a suggested price list? So a suggested price list. Yes, I mean, that's difficult because if you're referring to price lists based on your services, then 9 out of 10, that's going to be based on the services you provide, right? So, hey, this is my price. Maybe you start to put that in hourly basis. Maybe you put that in per project basis, and you start to itemize that. But I would say that, it's good to have. I wouldn't even attempt to recommend anyone a price list because y'all might make more than me. I don't want to undercut and talk about, you should only be charging this. No, you be charging whatever they're willing to pay, especially if the value and the ROI makes sense. There's some people who charge $500 and there's some people who charge $5,000. There's some people who charge $50,000. The work that they produce may not even be different. It just may go to a different clientele. It may be directed at a different type of campaign. Imagine a large governmental organization or a big business would value a website much more than a small company. Small company may say, I only got 5,000. A big company may say, we our starting budget is $100,000 because that's just what we allocate for things like that. So again, for me, I wouldn't even attempt to disrespect anyone by suggesting a price. But what I would say is that I do suggest that you create a price list. Even if it's not something you stick with, you just need to have some type of foundation to what your prices are, whether that be hourly, whether that be per project, whether that be per task, whatever the case may be, to where you have some type of basis. Because I will say this, 9 times out of 10 in negotiations, there's two people talking. The first number mentioned is the foundation to how much that price is going to be. So if a $5,000 price range is thrown out, 9 times out of 10, the end price of this project is normally going to be either $5,000, a little bit over $5,000, or a little bit under $5,000. So if you, as a freelancer, are looking to make a certain number, make sure you keep that in mind that, hey, if I give this number 9 times out of 10, they may go a little bit, it may end up going a little over, but they may try to get me a little under. So if I pitch 5,000, they might try to tell me, well, can you do it for 4,500? Can you do it for 4,000? And if you can plan that inside of your price list, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be losing $500, $600, $700, $1,000 every single time you negotiate, because you really wanted, you really needed $5,000 to get the project. However, you asked for $5,000 to get the project, when in reality, you needed $5,000 for the project and you should have asked for $5,500. You should have gave yourself some room to where if they went a little above, great. If they went below, guess what? You still hit your target.
Thanks, Aaron. Can you talk to us a little bit about managing people? Of course, the projects that we take on may involve multiple people with multiple skill sets collaborating on it. So could you tell us about what's the best or good systems, paradigms that we can use to manage communication and deliverables among all the people in our project?
That's a great question. That's a great question, because one of the biggest things in project management is that you have to balance the ability to manage projects and the ability to manage people. Because in reality, you are doing a little bit of both. You have to manage their expectations. You have to manage if they're maybe excited, happy, if they're creative, if they're feeling good. If you have a team of people, you need to make sure that everybody is motivated and everybody is excited about the task at hand, but also that everybody's bringing their best foot forward, right? So you're going to have to put yourself in a position to where you can assess that initially. So essentially, as a business owner, as a project manager, as a leader, you have to be able to assess your team and say, hey, I need, first of all, these type of aspects around me. How can I assess that these people have these type of qualities? How can I test that they have these type of qualities over a long period of time? And how can I learn them and motivate them and really care about the team that I have? Because one thing I will say is that when it comes to a team, I am not one to fake the phone. I want to love the people around me. I want the people around me to love me. I want them to love the work that we're working on. And I want to be able to clearly understand if they don't beforehand, because 9 times out of 10, their dislike can affect the quality of the project. It can not only affect the quality of maybe the project itself, but it can affect the quality of the people within the project. So if you got a Debbie Downer, they can bring down everybody else. If you got a group of people who are exciting and excelling and they're feeling great and they're overachievers and they're motivating each other, they're going to do that with everybody else. So you want to position your team and be very, very, very strategic and understanding that, hey, you have to be, slow to hire and quick to fire. You need to be able to get people and understand that, hey, if this is not working, we need to be able to make sure that this is understood, because managing your team is very important. And it's not even just about firing. It's about understanding that maybe this is something that just doesn't work for us. Not just me, but you as well. Because if you are unhappy 9 out of 10, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe something is off and we need to kind of restart and reset. So to touch on that, is one of those things where it's like, hey, you have to be able to essentially be, proactive. Scouting your team, understanding your team, looking at how your team communicates. Maybe you have a person who uses Slack. Maybe you have another person who loves email. Maybe you have another person who strives picking up the phone. Me, for one, I'm not going to sit there necessarily be the one who can give you the best message, but if you pop on a line with me, I can give you a good 5 minutes. I can solve all of those things right there. You have to be able to assess that and say, hey, if you work with other developers, this developer, if I pick up the phone, this is the type of person that they are. Or this is when they work best. Maybe it's a time thing. Maybe they work best in the morning or at the night. For me, myself, most of the creatives I work with at night. The reason why is because most of them are working during the day. So they're up at night, working, knocking things out. If I wasn't taking that into account, I would be calling them at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and wondering why they're not answering. I'm over here getting mad, upset why they missing deadlines because I got projects that's due at 12 when I know they don't get off till 5. So in reality, having those understandings with your team, understanding their needs, their wants, but also understanding how to successfully open and close a project is very important. Because when it comes to your team, you want to make sure that the expectations help them get started in a project, but the close of this project is just as important. Because what happens if you finish this project? Do you just leave them out in the air to dry? Do you just let them go? Do you not communicate with them again? Me, I like to be the person, hey, let's keep morale going. Your project is over. Let's celebrate. Let's go to lunch. Let's go sit down. Let's go eat something. Let's keep everybody going. And then let me set expectations on what can possibly be happening next. Let me talk to y'all maybe about another project that's happening while we're eating lunch, or maybe I don't talk project at all. Maybe I'll let y'all know that I'm just here for y'all. So understanding your team, understanding how to boost their confidence, understanding how to motivate them, understanding that you are going to be the one that has to lead by example, because they're going to be looking at you as the leader. If you're slacking, they're slacking. If you're not doing this, they're not doing that. And if you're not checking in, they're not checking in on you. So in reality, you want to put yourself in a position to where you let them understand that, hey, I'm here for you. I support you. I can, I will get any answers for you. I will back you. Maybe you have some team members who need some additional WordPress training. Show them, I'll pay for the course. Look, that I see the value in you. I'm willing to invest in you, right? Invest in your team in so many ways. And I'm telling you, the return is going to be, it's just going to be something that you can't even quantify. So I hope that answers your question. And I'll be more inclined to go into a specific aspect if you need me to.
Well, it does answer some of my question. I'm concerned about how do we manage the communication process throughout a project. How do we make sure that issues are communicated in a timely way, and that also deliverables are received in a timely way? Is there a particular methodology that you use or recommend?
Well, I wouldn't say. Well, it's one of those things where that's difficult, because in reality, that's going to obviously vary. But a lot of that, again, goes back to setting their expectations. So I'm saying, so a lot of that starts from the beginning. A lot of those things you're not trying to do in the middle. You're talking about managing the communication. The goal is to really, a lot of that comes in setting expectations. Hey, if something goes wrong, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to handle that. This is how we're going to situate it. This is how we come together. If we need to huddle up, again, you don't wait till something doesn't work to tell people what happens if it doesn't work. You don't wait till the fire alarm rings to tell people to fire the drill. You kind of give them the drill in the beginning. So when I say effectively managing that communication, it starts by communicating first, right? So when you want to effectively manage the communication aspect, start in the beginning with that. Now, as far as a specific methodology, I think it's just transparency. It's transparency. It's keeping people in the loop. It's letting people know what's really going on. It's letting people understand that, it's something that, look, this is a problem we've incurred. This is something that's happening. We're behind on a deadline, and really being upfront with that. And I don't know if that 100% answers your question, but for me, I don't try to overcomplicate how to talk to people. I just talk. Yo, you wrong. I'm wrong. We wrong. This needs to be done. The goal is to solve the problem. But in the beginning, if something does go wrong, this is what we're going to do. Now, what's going to actually happen, we don't know until that situation occurs. And it's something that you can't always be, ahead of, but you can put the protocol in place to have the meeting. Hey, let's huddle up. We know that when the fire drill is going off, everybody knows to meet at the door. We don't know what we're going to do maybe when we get there, but we know we need to meet at the door. So, hey, we all need to get on the line. We all need to have this conversation. We all need to talk. But a lot of the communication that I find in projects that don't go according to plan is because transparency is not there. There's somebody trying to hold more information than the team, than the rest of the team, and they're not effectively communicating clearly. And it doesn't need any process to that. Just be real. This is what I expect. This is what you expect. This is when we expect it. If something goes wrong, this is our safety measure in place. These are all things being said in the beginning. And I'm gonna let you know up front. Don't call me, don't make me call you, and you haven't checked in 2 weeks. And then I called you and you tell me that I haven't called you because you ain't called me. Or I haven't called you because I had a question. I had a question. Do you remember when we talked about in the beginning that if you have a question, you can slack it over to me, or that you can do this to me? And so it's essentially, it's like one of those things where it's like the goal is to have that very transparent open door policy. And again, I'm not sure if that 100% answers your question, because to me, I don't really think it's a process that you can really put in place to that. I really just think you have to take that and kind of adjust that based on your team.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And as we are coming to the close, officially we have 12 minutes left in this meetup. I want to ask you specifically about you and your services. Now tell me if I understand correctly, ArcBM, the company that you operate, provides, among other things, project management services. They work with freelancers and businesses to manage projects, and you also provide personnel to work on projects. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So how, as a freelancer or small business owner in needing project management services, how do I work with you? What do we need to have in place? What are the conversations that we will have to initiate this relationship?
Okay, so it depends on the avenue, right? So we manage creative projects for freelancers, small business owners, creative agencies, and large enterprises. So essentially, if you're a freelancer that needs your projects managed, meaning that you can actually have us do all of the things that we talked about in this call for you, meaning that all you have to do is get the work, and we'll manage the rest. Now, on the flip side of that, we also have people who we have a vetted pool of creative talent, to where if someone comes to us and say, hey, we need our project managed, however, we don't have a creative to actually get the job done. So we need a website. We want you to manage that project, but we don't have a web developer. Then we have a vetted pool of talent that we would say, hey, we have the people that can get it done, and we're going to manage it from there. Now, how that would initiate is just us having a separate conversation based on what your needs are. What type of projects you have, what type of project management you believe you would need for your organization, whether that be any of those four, and really outlining, what your expectations are. So I'm going to take through almost the same process I went through today. What are your expectations? Here's mine. How does this work? What are your goals? Let's find your objectives. Let's make sure we're smart about this, and let's make sure that we can get this done.
Great. Considering what you spoke about before in terms of the essential requirements of a project, I would imagine that it is conceivable that a freelancer or business owner may come to you with a project that isn't quite suitable because they didn't initiate a project to the client in the correct way. Is that correct?
Yes, for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage freelancers to have project managers. So one of the things that I encourage freelancers to do is, regardless if that's me or someone like myself, is to have a project manager that you can say, hey, you're interested in working with me? Call my project manager. So a person like myself, if you had a person interested in working with you, I would actually be someone who you could say, call my project manager. Aaron is going to be someone who's going to take you through my process. He already knows how I work. He knows my timeline. He knows my price. He knows all of these different things. And I'm going to be the one that effectively communicate back and forth with them on your behalf. So that kind of eliminates you from having to start out, in a way to where you have to kind of adjust afterwards. So normally I would recommend, if you want to avoid that, have a project manager initiate off rip. Have a project manager no different than someone would have a lawyer. You get in trouble, you want to call a lawyer. Hey, call my lawyer. You have something going on with your business, your projects, you want to be able to tell people, call my project manager. Reach out to them, they got me, they're going to take care of the rest.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? All right, if there are no other questions or comments, do you have anything else to say, Aaron? Anything you want to leave us with?
Well, I want to commend everyone here, first of all, for just being here. That's number one, because a lot of people, like I told y'all in the beginning of the call, my job is something that most people do. Most people are already project managers. They just don't know that they are. And they're not strategically aligning themselves to manage their projects correctly. Everyone on this call is taking the first step to doing so. You're putting yourself in a position to be able to understand how to manage your time, clientele, your income, and your work-life balance better. Because we all have to continuously manage on a day-to-day basis. And just being here, for me, I want to say, hey, you're taking that first step forward. If there's anything I can continue to provide outside of the document that I'm looking to offer, definitely let me know. My contact information, if I could pass it along, I will. And just let me know that if there's any additional questions that I can answer later on, to be able to make sure that y'all are continuing to manage your projects properly.
Great. And Yarani has your contact information, I'm sure, and she'll post it in the chat, right? And we can always shoot you an email if you want to initiate a relationship with you, or if we may have any questions or concerns that we think you may be able to shed some light on.
For sure. And I'm always down to, possibly talk about this in even a couple months, kind of refresh, level 2 it or something like that. So we can open that conversation, that dialogue about that as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you, Aaron, for taking the time to speak with us this evening. Well, it's evening where most of us are, I think. And I definitely learned a lot. It's definitely caused me to do some thinking about my business processes, as you say, about building the store before the customer walks through the door, for sure. I know for me, project management has been a big deal because I've decided recently to not manage projects anymore because it's difficult. It's something that takes a lot of time. It takes time away from business development, and then I'm a developer too. So where I need to jump into development, it takes time away from that. So definitely, I've decided to outsource project management for the most part. So I think it's definitely something that I think all of us should consider, as we try to grow our businesses or our freelance practice and we try to scale, that it's impossible to do everything ourselves. And project management is one of those things that can really save us time, money, and headaches if it's done right. So that's what I take away from this, and I want to thank you once again, Aaron. I want to thank all the people who came out to the chat today, out so to speak. Now, there are some useful links in the chat. I posted a little earlier a link to the Jamaica WordPress Meetup. the Jamaica WordPress Meetup is where that's our little space where we convene on Slack, where we have discussions surrounding WordPress, and it's also a good place to find people to collaborate with. Maybe you have a project that you need help with, or maybe you want to join in on another project. It's a good place to do that. So I want to encourage you all, if you're not already a part of the Jamaica WordPress Meetup, to use that link to join on Slack, and of course meetup.com. I think where most of us, or where most of you found us. There's also a link to Aaron's company, arcbm.com, in the chat. So please check that out, and there are other useful links in the chat. Also to the Jamaica developers community. That's another group, a broader group of developers and tech enthusiasts that you can join, which is headed by O'Shane Bailey, one of our organizers. So I'm going to leave it right there if nobody has anything else to add. And thank you once again for coming out. And there should be a recording of this available, O'Shane?
Yes, it's actually already available. We've been streaming to YouTube. Apart from that, there is a Zoom recording that I'll post on the community forum for Jamaican developers, as well as our Caribbean.dev website. For one of the links that we sent a link that has all of the various tech communities in Jamaica and the Caribbean, like WordPress, Docker, Flutter, you name it. On top of that, in that link, it also has it also will give you some additional links to jobs and opportunities that you can get in the Caribbean, as well as international and remote jobs. So you can just check out the Caribbean, communities.jamaicans.dev for all of the information, along with the information for this event and WordPress overall.
Thanks a lot, O'Shane. So please check out those links. All right, we're going to call it here tonight. Thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you, Aaron. I hope that we'll get another chance to speak with you again in the future, because I could see many useful spin-offs to this conversation. Have a good night, everybody, and please keep your eyes peeled for the announcement of our next meeting. Thank you. Good night, everyone.